And so like how many people do you like interview or like do the workshops with? And doesn't that
Uh,
get chaotic as hell?
yeah, so the ideal is like 5 to 10.
5 to 10.
10 is like the ideal number. 5 is still not too bad. You get some variety in what people are saying. I've had ones with like 15 to 16, and it grows, right? The more people you have, the longer it takes because you have more opinions coming in when you ask open questions. And then in the end, when everyone's sharing out their diagrams, you have to take more turns because there are more people to share. So you may have to extend out the length of the session if you end up with a very large group. There also
Mhm.
might be people who feel like they aren't heard in some of the discussions. So I think 5 to 10 is the ideal size. 10 is probably the ideal, so you get kind of a good amount of people. But you as the facilitator have to be conscious to make sure that you're calling on people who feel like they might be quiet just to make sure they get time to talk.
Right.
All right,
And
so
so
you start out. Yeah, go ahead.
and so is it like I'm just trying to understand like the in terms of the actual exercise, like
Mm-hmm.
what that might look like. So you're
Yep.
working on designs that already exist with current customers, current users. So what would be an example of an exercise?
So
Like and like what are the
yeah,
design components they would use and what's the medium and like what are they
yeah.
working with?
So
Yeah,
we start with the preamble, then we do a let's discuss your top pain points. So let's do the like little like session at the start where you talk about what bothers you about our product. Let's get that out of the way. Then the next thing I'll do is I'll have a small discussion, like like 10 minutes on what are their main pain points around whatever piece of the software or product that we want to talk about today and have them draw. So start to get them thinking about what they then want to put into their ideas to address those issues that they have. And we do that in a group setting so that you can kind of see the issues that people have across their team so they get that kind of more global view. And so we have that discussion to get them start thinking about what features they might want to have, what they might want to have better than what they have today, stuff like that. And then I usually keep, when I used to do these in person, I would keep those up on the wall on post-it notes so people would have access to it. And I'd write them as they talked. Now that we're doing things digitally, I'll often type it up and then I can leave it on the screen for them for later. The next step is then I start going into a drawing exercise. Now, people, especially people who are in B2B and not in creative fields, might not feel comfortable drawing and sharing drawings. So I will always do a warm up exercise that's usually like 10 minutes of drawing and then 5 minutes of presenting, picking on random people, not the whole group. And that's to get people to, first of all, get comfortable with drawing, get comfortable with sharing, and also to make sure that people are understanding the instructions, because I have found that many times I will do the warm up exercise. And even though I tell them, hey, draw boxes and squares, I show them an example of a drawing I made of an interface that's just like boxes and squares and squiggles. And I'm like, just, this is my drawings. This is how I draw. They'll still draw like a flow of text. Like, here's my screen flow. And they'll just be words, right? So you want to make sure that people are getting the instructions. The warm up exercise also gives you an opportunity to correct people who are not following the instructions or may not have realized what they were supposed to do. And the other thing I do with the warm up exercise is I go first. So I'll draw while other people draw. And the topic will usually be something vaguely related to what they're doing, but in a more mundane topic. So, for example, if we were asking them to create some visualization aspect of our product where they could interact with the visual, maybe I'll ask them, hey, take this data from COVID cases, right? Let's say you were to create a dashboard to help inform people about COVID cases. What would you want that dashboard to look like? What interactions would you want to have? And give them that as an initial topic. And then after that warm-up exercise, where I'll also draw with them and I'll be the first to share, then we go into the core exercise, which is, okay, now do that same visualization task of drawing out your interface, but this time for a visualization in context of your work and this product, whatever the topic is. So that's kind of how I flow into it. We have the warm-up
Mhm.
exercise, and then we have the core exercise. And again, during that core exercise, I'll bring up the items they mentioned were the things that bothered them about their workflow today, and the things they wish they had in their workflow. And I'll say, okay, we're now doing the same thing for that. Again, draw things out, boxes and squiggles, just
Uh-huh.
like I showed you.
Uh-huh.
They give them a
So
lot more time for this. This is why this is like a
right.
2 hour session, because a lot of times the drawing portion is like half an hour all by itself,
Right.
plus all the stuff I'm doing around.
So,
Um,
so I'm
yeah,
curious, like, sorry, in practice, like, so it's more likely that's going to be the warm-up exercise is going to be like, oh, here's a dashboard, or sorry, like, here's some data for XYZ
yep,
COVID. Can you make a dashboard? It's more likely it's going to be that than like, here's a square and circle, I'd like you to repeat that. I'm just trying to
Yes.
imagine how what I would
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you give
like.
them like if you had to design an interface,
Okay.
the purpose of this type of session. Okay, it comes very early on. So the idea with this is before you have anything like set in stone, before you started building stuff and having constraints in what you can build, this is the like you have a magic wand and you can wave it and make whatever you want sort of session.
Hmm.
So that's why you don't want to start them with squares and squiggles. Although I think one of the things I didn't end up doing this, but one of the things you could do when you're doing it remotely is you could provide them with a PowerPoint with circles and squares already there so they can copy paste them if
Hmm.
they feel more comfortable doing that. Yeah, you basically give them the topic and they have a blank canvas on which to draw. And then you ask them to draw and you give them like half an hour at least, depending on how much you have them draw. And you kind of check in with them. I check in with them every like 10 minutes, see how things are going. When I used to do it in person, I could actually see how far people were in their drawing. When I'm doing things remotely, I have to kind of verbally ask how people are doing.
Hmm.
And then I want to make sure everyone has enough time to get done. Some people get done early and that's okay. In terms of the medium people use, I generally let people use whatever medium they want. So traditionally, I would go into the room physically and I would bring a bunch of papers and colorful permanent markers, and I would say use these tools. Now that we're all remote, I tell people use a paper and use a thick marker, whatever you have, and then you can take a picture of it and send it to me. Or if you prefer a digital format, you can make something in PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever, and then just share that link or that document with me for sharing. So I give people the freedom to pick whichever medium works for them because I don't really care. Either one
Hmm.
works for me as long as I get it in the end.
Hmm.
And one thing you have to be really sure about is that you instruct people to send it to you after they're done. If you don't, if you ask them to like send it to me after the session, they won't remember to do it. So make sure if you want to have a record outside of the meeting recording, like an actual like static picture, that's probably a little higher resolution, then you put that into your
Hmm.
instructions for that activity. So they do the drawing when it seems like everyone is pretty much done or you're running low on time, you kind of have to move on. Then you can start doing the presentation part. So that at this point, I mean, I'm not doing any presentation. I did the warm-up exercise, but I'm not doing this part with them. I'll just pick a random person to get started or see if anyone wants to volunteer, and they can start to explain their interface. And just like in the warm-up exercise where I gave them an example of how to explain, I basically have them say, okay, just tell me what are the squares and squiggles, what do they represent, what would you want them to do, and then they just kind of can dive into their drawings and just kind of ask prompting questions. If you notice something on their drawing that they forgot to point out, you can be like, oh, hey, what about this thing? I saw that you had that in the corner. What did that mean, right? So,
Hmm.
and then you do that for every person as you kind of go around the table or go down the list or however you want to pick
Right.
people.
So
Um,
in the case of like a dashboard,
mhm.
would you provide an example of what a dashboard means or is to people
I
beforehand?
would, if I have a concern about definitions, I would potentially define it. I would hesitate to give them a visual because it would bias them towards that visual. So
Right.
I try to give them as little visual pretext as I can.
Right.
I could certainly give them here's the purpose, here's the core purpose of the dashboard, like here's what it should do for people. It should show them this particular information, and the key features we wanted to include are X, Y, and Z. Or you can tell them, hey, tell us what what you want to see in this dashboard, assuming your purpose is what we said the purpose of this dashboard is. So it depends on how much you want to constrain them, which depends on your product direction and your product teams and how much they're constrained on where they're going.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Gotcha. And I'm curious, like, have you found that like physical drawing to be more effective than let's say like shapes and PowerPoints and online digital
I think
boards and all of that, online kind of
so.
like
The problem with online digital boards, and the reason I don't use them is because there's a barrier to entry in learning them.
yeah.
So even like this
Yeah.
application right now in our meeting, I was late because
Uh-huh.
I was trying to figure out the technology, and
Right.
I work at a technology company, so like
Uh-huh.
it's not that it's just like it adds an added barrier, which will first of all potentially waste time in a session where you are already taking a huge chunk of time, and you're very compressed for time, and also especially people who are international who might have different firewalls or access to have different sites blocked. I don't know how anything works, but or maybe even they're doing it like in their office. Like I used to do B2B, it would potentially be during their workday. They might have certain sites blocked or certain apps blocked. So it's just, I know they have access to PowerPoint. I know they have access to paper and a camera, right? So those are the two things I know they have access to, and I know they're comfortable with this. That's the other thing is, besides the barrier of actually getting technology up and running, learning how to draw in the tool. People know how to use PowerPoint. People know how to draw directly, and you let them pick whichever one they're more comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So you just want to lower that barrier to entry. If they're not artists, they're not going to want to learn a tool, let alone do it while they're also having to draw something which is already putting them on the spot and they're already kind of nervous about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't use digital drawing tools like Mural or something. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's too much of an extra barrier.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, yeah, it's pretty. I guess it's not obvious, for
Yeah.
sure that
And,
that's there should be a direction, but it makes much more sense to go that way.
And I
Yeah.
did originally try to make people use a digital tool when I first started running remote sessions when the pandemic hit, and the feedback I got back was I'd rather draw it on paper. So that's
Uh-huh.
why I just let people pick, and I found that some people pick one and some people pick the other. So it's not like unanimous one way or the other. So again, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care how they send it to me as long as I get it. So let them be as comfortable as they can and however they have to draw things.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Another thing you can do, what I do in my sessions, is I'll often have a demo at the end. So even if we don't have much, if we have some idea of what we were planning to do, I like to share with them what we have so far. And what that does, again, we were in B2B, so it was in part to get some feedback on some of the things we had already built, just to like get some quick feedback while we were there, but also to show them that, hey, this was based on what other people said before you. We're listening to people, we're iterating on this. And look, we have this thing which you mentioned in your drawings, and we have this thing which you guys mentioned in your drawings. So we're kind of showing how we're staying aligned with them and how we're all kind of thinking the same direction to give them confidence in the product and that we're kind of taking them into account.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something you have to do, but you can take advantage of it if your work, sees benefit in getting some feedback on some early stuff you guys have that you've already built.
Right. And how does logging go for like a 5 person logging and note taking go for a
Mm.
5 person kind of a workshop? Like let's say someone speaks on their designs, um, like on their ideas on their designs. Like like is it just like typical just taking notes from there, or
Yes.
do they type in something, or do they write down anything, or
No, I don't
um,
make for them. I keep the barrier as low as possible.
mhm,
Nothing they have to do in addition to talking. The great
mhm,
thing about doing these sessions remotely is that I could easily record the session and it's not disruptive, and there's not like a bunch of noise in the room that will potentially make it so I can't hear them. So
mhm,
I usually just record sessions and take notes myself while they're talking.
mhm,
In the past, when I've done it in person, I've just had someone in there with me who was helping me take notes. And really, the core of the sessions is the drawings, and then sticky notes of their key pain points. So those I get regardless. But certainly, yeah, I try to take as many notes as I can as I'm talking, or if I'm in there in person, have someone else take notes. So it's not like I'm looking down all the time while they're speaking to me. But sometimes
gotcha.
you got to do what you got to do. If you're the only person there taking notes, you got to take notes. You can also record the room. Like you can have a little recorder. I think that would potentially be ideal. And people might be nowadays with coronavirus, people getting used to digital meetings and recording in digital meetings, they're more comfortable with it. Back then, I always felt like I wasn't sure if they would feel comfortable with it, so I never really brought it up. But it would probably help in terms of making sure you didn't miss anything during your sessions, even if you took notes yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, okay. Let's see. I mean, I've learned a lot. That was just
Yeah.
like a
Um,
really great 25 minutes of
Good.
info.
There is one thing, like, so what I just described is like the like draw piece of the workflow. Obviously, they won't
Yep.
have a chance to draw your entire product. So
Uh-huh.
usually I would have a step before this. That's more of a group discussion of what's your workflow. And this isn't so much co-creation that I'm not asking them to draw anything or tell me what features they want to have. I'm just trying to understand the steps of what they do when they're doing whatever it is my product is targeting. And then when I do these sessions for the drawing, I'll pick one of those steps, and that's what I want them to focus in on. And that's
Hmm.
how I kind of keep the scope down, because they're
Hmm.
not going to be able to draw the entire application. So that's another thing you might want to think about is before you even get to this stage, understanding what subset of your product you want to focus on. You might want to do some interviews to understand what that flow looks like. So you get
Right,
kind of the
right.
screen flow first, and then you have them dive into the individual screens.
Right, right. Cool. Actually, do you mind even just repeating all of what you just said again, just for understanding? I think they just kind of went
Yeah, sure.
in one ear out the other.
Sure. So the general kind of way I would do this is that I would actually start with a group interview. In my case, because it was B2B, you could do this individual interviews too, but you want to understand their workflow. So let's say, again, I'm in the B2B space. So I'm making a product for someone who does a job and they have certain steps they have to do in doing their job. So I'll meet with them and try to understand what those steps are. And I'll meet with a couple people because there might be some variance in the steps that people take or the order of those steps. And I'll try to understand what are these distinct chunks of things they do. And then we'll have a discussion. We're like, okay, kind of maybe the software should address these various chunks together in screens, right? Or there should be somehow chunked into the interface. So when we do, what the next step is then to do these sort of drawing exercise with people. Okay, for this particular chunk of features, for this particular screen, what do you
Hmm.
want it to look like?
Is this
So
part of your like what are your major problems kind of like discovery, or is that different?
So
Uh,
what are your major problems are
like
from discovery? Oh, it depends. Are you making a fully brand new product? Or are you trying to improve, like put a
right,
new feature set into an existing product?
right.
Um,
I guess I'm speaking to like I remember you mentioning you spent some time trying to understand like what people's
right.
major problems are,
Yeah.
and then from that they create
Right. So
potential
that would be
designs.
per step in this case. So you would find the step or subset of features that you want to focus on, and then you ask them what are your pain points with this particular subset of features,
Okay,
and
okay.
what
I
would you
see, I
want
see.
the interface, that screen that addresses the subset of
Uh-huh.
features to look like.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So you're
So
saying to narrow down those kind of like chunks first.
yeah,
There's like
yeah,
chunks of
because you can't ask them to draw the entire
right.
interface. They just won't have the time or the energy to do it. So you need some way to narrow it down, either by chunks of feature sets. Maybe you have some idea of the screens you want to have, but somehow you have to chunk it down. So you need to find those logical chunks before you start doing this really deep dive into each chunk.
Hmm. So it'd be something like, hey, we're going to talk about, let's say, the like onboarding for this app.
Yep,
Um,
yep. Show me
part
the
one.
onboarding process you want to go through.
Uh-huh.
Yep,
And then number two, like defining the like asking them what are the major problems you might have there, and then three, kind of like co-design and
yep.
drawing and whatnot.
Right. But
Like
of just
last
that onboarding piece. And then you have
of
that piece
okay.
ready to build, and then you can move on to your other piece.
Cool. Cool. I feel like I owe you coffee. This has been like super super high value add. Like
That's
I
great.
don't know if you're up for like research coaching, I could use a coach. I've been looking for always looking for new coaches. So like
I can
yeah.
try. I'm only at senior level, so I don't have the like director or VP experience, but always happy to
Anything more
share.
than me is already great.
Yeah,
But
feel
like
free
this
to
was
reach out. Yeah, if you have
yeah.
any other questions or want to meet again to discuss a different topic, like just let me know.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm gonna try and give it a shot. Give
Mhm.
co-design workshops a shot. Haven't really nailed it down yet. Been kind of. I feel like there's not a lot of material, or like reading material
Yeah,
out there on this one. Um,
yeah, and I feel like a lot of times when I've looked it up, they talk about like co-design within a company, like within internal SMEs or with like the product teams.
hmm
And to me, it's like that's good, but like, why not do it with customers? And you're right, there's just not that much out there when it comes to doing them with customers.
hmm Yeah, exactly. So this is really useful because of that. Yeah, I'll definitely want to stay in touch and
Yeah,
reach out to you if any further questions. And yeah, thanks for the time.
yeah, no problem. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.